I would ask you all to turn off your mobile phones, if possible. This is a debate that will be filmed by Associated Press Television and will be distributed to our clients later in the day. And I'd like to take this opportunity now to welcome the panel. To my left, we have the Prime Minister of Montenegro, Igor Lukšić. We have Professor Victor Halberstadt of Leiden University in the Netherlands. David Serra, founding and managing partner of Algebris Investments in the UK. And Mark Leonard, Director of the European Council on Foreign Relations. It's been quite an incredible year for Europe, as we all know, with quite staggering numbers. Hundreds of billions of euros being talked about to avert bankruptcy in key nations. Even then, people say those figures aren't quite enough. I'll be asking the panel their view on whether this is actually a fine moment in European history, unparalleled solidarity of one nation trying to help another, or is this the beginning of the end of Europe as a union as we know it? I'd like to start off by asking the Prime Minister of Montenegro how he views the current economic crisis.
Well, the name of the title of the panel is quite inspiring. It seems not to be only stress testing in banking terms, it's like stress testing in psychological terms for all Europeans, as it is obviously a very difficult period in which we are, and normally people in these parts of the world are not used to that sort of economic crisis or the aftermath of the economic crisis, and therefore it takes more energy, more visionary, more visionary leaders to make decisions and come out of the problem. And it is obviously something that has implications on many foreign policy issues as well, not only economic ones. So probably it is without any doubt impossible to predict when crisis is coming up, and regardless of many economic pessimists who normally predict disaster and catastrophe and so on, it is logical that at some point crisis will come, and whether we are ready or not depends on how vital our economies are. And it very much, that situation very much reflects on what is it we've been doing in the past. Have we been losing competitiveness, shaded by the fact that strong euro performance or banking assets were booming, credit growth, real estate price, asset prices in principle are booming and so on, or we have led or conducted economic policy which is based on competitiveness. And that's where I believe European economy is currently. I don't think it's an issue of euro, it is an issue of competitiveness. And by having euro, it, I believe, makes government think more about not, lamenting over the fact that we don't have instruments of monetary policy. I think government should focus on structural reforms and improving business environment and fiscal financial stability. I think that. Well, I have to disagree to some extent with the view, because I think it's too much engineer-like sort of solution. Unfortunately, I think though it sheds more light on on unpreparedness of politicians to inform their voters about all the possibilities, but at the same time hides some other issues, because I don't think the solution is in comparing Europe with America in terms of, for example, these figures only. It may suggest that, okay, in the long run, it may be that America has more problems, but does it solve our problem? I don't think it solves our problem, because when Lehman Brothers collapsed, it just spilled over to Europe, and we were quite frantic in reacting, in each and every country. And I remember the time I was at that point finance minister. I was in Washington, and it was like bleak and panic and everything. And every finance minister and his government were trying to, change the situation, change the psychology of the people in their countries to prevent from the bank runs and so on and so on. I don't think, we may be solving the actual problem in terms of supposedly we're solving the actual problem with the debt of Greece, Portugal, or Ireland, for example. But we're not solving long-term structural problems of Europe. But we cannot run away from the fact that Europe's potential output growth is about 1.5%. Is it enough to sustain for the fact that 45-50% is the public expenditures? And is it enough to sustain the fact that there is a growing trend over time to assume social responsibilities away from the individual? I'm not sure. That's why I like the proposal in terms of economic solution to the practical problem, but I don't think it is enough to resolve the long-term challenges of European economy.
Might we see...
And the current crisis and the fact that euro helps us understand that we have a problem is into thinking what to do that when in case of another crisis we have a lesser problem. And some of the moves that are being made are probably correct, but there are probably again some other moves that are needed to be made but are not happening.
So which way will it go? Some people think the European Union might unravel, but from what I'm hearing, there's a sense that this is perhaps an opportunity for the EU to actually deepen its integration. Might we see countries ceding even more fiscal sovereignty, for example? Might we even see a Treasury Secretary for Europe? Could we go in that direction?
I'm not sure it's realistic. I mean, who knows? In 10, 20, 50 years' time, who knows? But I'm not sure it's realistic. I cannot assume that neither of the countries... Can you imagine Chancellor of the Exchequer giving up his... in case of United Europe, or German Treasury giving up its responsibility, or Italian one, Spanish one, in favor of some European one. It may be a rational solution to the problem, to harmonize treasury policies, but I'm simply not sure whether that's realistic or not, because probably to some extent economic crisis in Europe gave rise to some extreme to the right forces in Europe, in some countries, which are now getting more relevance and probably blocking some decisions, or even sort of politically blackmailing governments in order to sustain support to the minority governments, and so on and so on. So that's why it's difficult.
Thoughts? And what sense are you getting from Europe in terms of how long it might take?
Regardless of the economic crisis and everything else, there is vast support in Montenegro in favor of European integration. And that's important. Of course, as currently we're in the stage when we're actually implementing the action plan to convince the European Commission that we're ready for the accession talks. But once accession talks start, it will take more efforts to explain to the people all the benefits, advantages, disadvantages, and so on. And still, I believe that vast majority will eventually support European integration when it takes place to decide on that, because in some other countries in the region there are some specific issues that may tumble sort of the overall public opinion about that. But in principle, all the establishments are in favor of European integration, and there is, in principle, support of the people. Of course, the fact that there is economic crisis, that there is Northern Africa, some other global issues, Western Balkans altogether may be losing some attention. And that's why it makes it more difficult for us to, or actually it is motivating or stimulating us to do more in terms of deserving the attention. Currently, as I said, though it is a substantial change of the system we are trying to introduce by responding to the European Commission's recommendation, from the integration point of view, it's a relatively technical question. But at the same time, things that recent developments, such as decision of Serbia's government to extradite Mr. Mladić to The Hague, helps a lot, because it turns back the attention. And when the biggest country in the region is complying with the liabilities, then it helps all other countries to be valued adequately and be stimulated adequately to continue working towards the European integration process. So I agree with everything that has been said. I think that it is a lot better to be inside than to be outside. Even some relative Eurosceptics in Europe, such as probably President Klaus from Czech Republic, he is not advocating against the European Union. He thinks that it should be rearranged to a certain extent. So basically there is nobody relevant who is opposing the argument that it is better to be inside than outside. And I agree that for Montenegrin for the future of the Montenegrin society, it is relevant and vital to be inside, because the European integration process changes the set of values. It's not only about economic integration, it's not only about political institution building, it's also about what matters the most, values transition and reform. Well, I mean, if you asked people about more regulation over the banking, clearly the answer would be yes, because people want that bankers are reigned over and so on, that their salaries are cut down and so on and so on. But this is political landscape. The fact is that 2 or 3 years ago, everybody was happy with Basel II. And people thought that it should be okay to keep with the Basel II standards and everything should be okay. 2 years after that, we are now in the process of implementing Basel III. The problem is, at the same time with the regulation, is that you can never be for sure, and you cannot rely only upon regulation. However, that is minute and high quality regulation, because it was under ECB standards that stress testing was done 2 years ago, and some of the Irish banks, which were looked safe at that point, were turned more or less bankrupt, and last year's budget deficit was over 30%. So is it wrong? What's wrong? There's no perfect solution. There's no perfect regulatory framework. And you have to take it some time. And normally, regulatory framework changes in the periods of shocks. And that's quite reasonable to expect. It's just that at the same time, over-regulation could overkill the economy. And it's not only about financial sector, it's about any other sector.
Will there be a default? And the euro, will it survive as the single currency as we know it in, say, 5 years' time, Prime Minister?
It will. I think it will survive. About default, I don't know. I mean, depends. There may be a default, but nobody will speak about default. There may not be a default because there will be something else. I don't know. But I think I agree with what has been said. I think that people should know about all the possibilities that lie ahead and all the options to try to pick the most rational option.
Already. Thank you very much for a fascinating discussion.
I did get buzz on running line and mic, so I know the cable's fine. I know the back of the camera's fine because I tested the mic out.